welcome to this week's angling vlog. This week you join me back on the banks of the river on In Search of Pike. So before we do get into this week's vlog, I just want to say thank you to everybody that left such nice comments on the first video of the season where we went in search of pike and perch. It really was an experience though, catching that carp on a lure, and one I won't forget. And then to end with that pike on the canal, yeah, every one of those pike that I get out that canal mean a lot to me. It's a canal that I grew up on, and yeah, they are special fish indeed. So thank you all for the nice comments, and let's get on to this week's video. I do like getting on the bank at first light. It's a time of day where you get to see those silvers topping, and this morning we were greeted to a beautiful sky. It really was one of those autumn early morning skies that make coming on the bank for pike so magical. So this week's video is all about float fishing for pike. There was a lot of questions in the last video about the setups that I do use, and there are a number of videos on the channel over the years that do cover it, but I am aware that there are new subscribers to the channel all the time. So in this video we're going to go over my float setups that I use for pike. So visibility wise, the river's a lot better than the other vlog we did. You can see there, got a couple of foot of visibility. I'm just dropping that float right down the margin there, right next to the bank, just hoping that a predator is just patrolling this margin. So a quick look at the baits we've got with us today, and I always keep things nice and simple. Having two distinct size of baits I feel is important. We got some smelt, like I say on the channel, my all-time confidence bait, but not really the first bait that I put on the river really. More preferring the bigger food items like your herrings and of course your sardines. Now I will do a video on these shortly, because you can save a fortune on your bait bill by heading to Morrison's, but they are a bit of a nightmare to keep. Once you open the packet, they do stick together. So we'll be doing a video shortly on just fishing with sardines. So if that's a video you want to see, hit the comments down below and I'll show you how I prepare these. I'm not somebody that carries a magnitude. Over the years I've tried all types of baits for pike, but I'll just keep coming back to the basics. And yeah, if your mind's settled on baits you've got confidence in, then just stick to them. But that is the baits we've got today. The rod's literally been in probably, what, 10 minutes, and that whole herring just been snaffled out by a pike. Just going to try and concentrate, get it in. Obviously you always want to try and get the first one of the day in. So that pike definitely on the feed. That's the bait I caught it on, and you can see it's just regurgitated, a half digested one. So yeah, definitely on the feed. Let's take a look at it and then we'll get the rod back out. Just going over £10, 11 ounces, and what beautiful colours. Like I say, should have been a couple of ounces heavier if she hadn't spewed up that herring, but yeah, it's what I love about the river, the colours of the pike. Absolutely beautiful markings and hard fighting. Let's get this beautiful fish straight back and we'll get the rod back out. So the fish blogged. I'm going to leave her down there now, give her a good rest, and when she's ready to go, we'll let her go. And that is how you want them to go back. She was well behaved, sat nicely in the net. The net locked in place with a bank stick. And she didn't thrash about at all, just sat there, recovered, and as you've seen, zoomed off. And that's how you want to see them go. An excellent start to the session. The rods are back out, and hopefully there's one or two more out there. So the rod's back out and proper buzzing with that early start. Sometimes though it can be the kiss of death, can't it? You know, when you get that really early fish and we had only fishing till about 1 o'clock today. So yeah, got plenty of the morning left. Super buzzing to get that early pike, and especially with it being a double, it's always nice when they're a double. But yeah, sometimes that early reward can be the kiss of death. The rod's back out, that pike's gone back. Just gonna sit back, chill out, and hopefully them floats will start to dance again. So float fishing for pike is one of the most exciting forms of fishing that I do. You cast a dead bait out and obviously it doesn't move. Then all of a sudden the float comes alive, starts dancing along the surface, and yeah, it really is exciting. What we're going to do is look at the basics that you need to put this rig together. We're going to look at the floats and the different scenarios when I will use the different floats that I use for pike fishing. So first of all, let's take a look at the basics that you need to tie any float rig that I use for pike. So the basics that you need to tie any of the float rigs that I use on the channel, whether that's for the canals, rivers or lakes, we'll go through now. You need some float stops on the line, some beads. Now if you go in your tackle shop into the sea fishing section, you'll get hundreds of them for like £2. And yeah, so you put them on your line. You need obviously your floater choice. You need then your weight on the line, and you know the two options that I use is either a Dinsmore ball ledger or some of the snapper leads from Cordon, and that's down to a quick change link on which you'll put your trace. Always good to have a good pair of scissors, you know, for cutting the braid. But that is the general basics that you need for the pike float setup that I use on the channel. So when all them components come together, the stops up the line, because we are fishing quite deep today, you can see you've got the two beads. Now they are important because obviously in the low light you want to see when your float's cocked, and I fish my float just over depth, so it's nice and sensitive, so when that pike moves off you know straight away. Coming down the rig, you can see we've got the float and we've got the lead that's in place, the quick change swivel that you've seen at the start, and then obviously an 18-inch wire trace that I do tie myself. And if you want to see a video on tying wire traces, leave a comment down below and we'll get one made. But yeah, that is how all them components come together to make that rig. What we'll do now is we'll take a look at the different floats that we use and why we use them. So when it comes to float choice for pike fishing, like all forms of fishing, it really can be a minefield. There's so many options out there. So what we're going to do now is just try and break it down and simplify it a little bit into how I think about floats, why and when I use them, and some of them, quite simply, we can get out of the way straight away, really are functional. Like this one, it's nice and light, it's made out of balsa, and that's a cork one that I've had made for me. Them two straight away are nostalgic. I just love using them. They're handmade and mean a lot to me. So yeah, sometimes it can just be down to pure nostalgia why you choose a float. The main bulk of floats that I use are here, and we'll go over these ones now, when and how I use them and in what scenario. Starting at the lightest end of the scale, you've got the pencil float and you've got my 20-gram Corbin float as well. They are the two lightest floats that I do own, and these predominantly are used for the canal or on the river when there isn't much pace, or if it's a small still water and I can cast the baits out. What these offer you is a really light setup. That one down the margin on the canal or the far bank, if it's not windy, will offer you supreme lightness of presentation. You'll see the bite's really sensitive, and if you are fishing for pressured pike, it offers you no resistance at all. Obviously on the canal you get times when there's a bit of tow on, there's wind and stuff like that, and that is when I'll use this float. It's got the bigger profile for casting, but also holding in position. On places like the canal and the river, you don't want a bait really drifting about unless you want to present that way, because you're just looking for snags then. I want a clear spot, and I want to know I'm fishing. Them two are predominantly for the canal, where I want to offer that light presentation and minimal resistance. You want to be fishing for pike as light as possible, but with enough weight to get out there and stay out there. So the only thing that really changes in the whole setup is the weight. You know, a heavier float and heavier weights to keep it in position. Now, if I want to fish with heavier weights, then the 40 gram snapper float is the one that I'll use. You know, you can attach any size weight to that if you want to fish on the bottom, or up to 40 gram if you want to fish it, you know, cocked up to there like that. So that does offer you the weight to get out in the river, but also that heaviness to stay where you want to fish. Obviously, if you want to fish on the bottom only, then you can use this, but bear in mind that you can only fish it on the bottom. Obviously, if you start putting 40 gram on the end of that, it's going to sink. So these do okay with any weight that you want to use, but you do need to know that you've got to fish on the bottom with them. But again, the most important thing that I'm thinking about in my mind is I want to fish in that clear spot and I want the bait to stay there. So if I want to fish a bait off bottom, or a live bait or suspended bait, then these are the floats that I will use, because they've got that bigger dome top to support any bait that you want to use. You know, what you don't want with baits, maybe a live bait on the canal or the river, is it going under. It's got to be heavy enough to support that bait. Hopefully that bit of information on my pike fishing setup and the floats that I use for pike will get you out there on the bank. As you can see, there's nothing complicated. It really is simplicity itself. Simple mechanics, simple tackle. The less you put on the line, the less can go wrong. So the float rod just started to move off. You can see it's going against the flow. The float's gone again. We've got about 2 hours of the session left, and hopefully we can get one more. But I'm hoping that those hints and tips on the float fishing are going to help you out in your fishing. Like I said, that's what the channel is all about, you know, sharing those hints and tips and as much information as possible. It's a lovely looking pike, proper made up. Let's get it straight back. By my best efforts, no more bites were forthcoming on that session. That sun really did come over onto the river, and I really do think it did hinder bites. The lesson to be learnt there though is to be on the bank for that feeding period, where early on we got those couple of fish. I just want to wish you all tight lines in your own fishing. It'd be really great if you could like and subscribe, and I'll catch us all next week. Tight lines.